want to introduce today's topic, following up on our topic from about a month ago. So Will and I decided we would tackle another hot topic, and today we're going to talk about race, politics, and religion in the global workplace. And what we want to talk about is if it's still taboo to talk about those topics in the workplace. So we're going to look at these often avoided but increasingly it just being in the atmosphere. Don't talk about race, politics, and religion at
Yeah.
work. Don't put it on your resume. Don't talk. I mean, it was just kind of, I don't recall how many times I either was explicitly told that or just implicitly, just because of the environment in which, just growing up in the U.S. when those were always hot topics. What about you? Like, how did those become to be taboo?
They're part of our identity. And so we're not able to.
With all of the conflicts that have been, going on recently around religion and religious differences or religious ideology, how important is it now more than ever to have those discussions at work? And then in what context should they be held in the workplace?
It's important for us to not be tone deaf, need to be appreciated and respected in this workplace. What you do at home, I can't control what you do at home, but what you do here at work. So you could be a champion, but if you don't have the capacity, you're not the leader. You're not the one that facilitates those conversations. So that to respond to the who should be responsible for kind of the rollout.
At least in a Western context, we don't assign anything negative. Like that's the most privileged religion of all, I would say, because you can just go into it and say, I'm Christian, and you can hold your head high and not think somebody's gonna, do extra security checks on you, or people are gonna be looking at you strange. Like you can break out a Bible on the plane, and nobody's gonna think twice. Let you break out a Quran, people might be like, whoa, 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 hey, what's going on there, buddy? You know.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I can when you look at it through that lens.
Right. Not in addition to asking for accommodations, but what about just, there are some religions, which is very interesting because, and it was some type of overgarment and some white pants. And we talked a little bit and he said, yes, we're going into my holy, the holy day for my religion.
We always talk about belonging and inclusion, and how do you have a person like you coined bring their best professional selves to work, right? Not
Hmm.
so much your
Hmm.
authentic self, but your best professional self to work, like the person that I am paying you to come to work as, right? And
Hmm.
religion from this standpoint, in terms of the context in which to speak about it at work, moral, ethical, social justice. That's not to disregard those, but just in the context of if you as a leader or leaders within the organization see that, oh, this is something that without, if we, like you said earlier, if we don't get out ahead of this, it can disrupt all staff meeting, all hands meeting. Hey, we're going to have a discussion about this, and it's going to be very strategic, facilitated. But we would just talk about, hey, given what's going on in the world, we're not talking about in how we treat our customers shop, because they may be a part, they will be impacted by these things as well. And so our ability.
Right. And it would be great for me just to understand that, because here's a reality. I'm gonna pray for you, and you don't believe in prayer. That 57 and 45% depends on who's seeing it. Because when you're outside of the majority, when you're outside the numerical majority of anything.
Your ethnicity, your background, your lived experience, but also your knowledge, right? Because a lot of times people don't understand, like just because you are born in a minority group, especially like in the U.S. context, if you're African American, that doesn't mean you're just born with the knowledge of the history in your brain. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
so
yeah,
it's something like if you don't even know what they are, you don't even see them, right? Like they just feel like, oh, okay, that didn't feel too good, but you don't get like, hey man, I've never experienced any problems, and everything's even Steven. And
yeah,
you have more of a idealist view of the world, which is not bad, but it just doesn't take into consideration certain realities, right? And so that's the
yeah,
thing. I would say, hey, both things can be true. Like
yeah.
race and what it means in the U.S. context or any other global context in which I am living or working, or operating, or what have you. Because I think when you do it, if you do it correctly, like we talked about with religion, when you start seeing, and this was salient when we saw with the George Floyd murder, because that was so big that every organization felt they had to take action, right? Can we not, based on anecdotal evidence, based on hard evidence, whatever, that while we do see some disparities or differences based on these racial categories, can we as an organization just have frank conversations about why that is? And we're going to have, like you said, facilitated conversations. It could be that I am perceiving these things based on how I view the world and based on how I've been kind of raised or kind of, it's been cultivated in a sense.
To be able to air out what they were experiencing, especially if they were the numerical minorities within the context of the organizations. And I'm being very deliberate when I say numerical minority. There are more white folks in the United States than there are black folks. Bottom line, and when the numbers that I look at is there's 70, the United States have 70% white and 13% black.
It can impact you. It can be impacting you, right? Not talking about them, like, well, how does anything get solved then, right? Not looking at through an adult lens or older adult. I'm like, man, that was really bad advice. However that came about, because what gets solved when you don't talk about it, right? And so this kind of power of conversation and in framing it in a way, like you said, okay, again, imagine we say, hey, we see that that's a very transactional way to deal with humans, right? To people in general, right? So there's a mix, right? And so that's why I don't like to go full in on business case or full on the moral or social justice case, because you can make the same argument. You go too extreme on one side or the other, and you miss that middle. So it's kind of like this blend where you say, look, how might those groups be able to help the broader organization understand and be like a connection to the external market, right? So that to your point, now you get pure business case there, because now you say, hey, man, I won't say pure business case, but you get the innovation that flows from having a diverse workforce. Because a lot of times people think, man, we see all these reports on diversity, how it leads to innovation, and yada yada yada. What they don't understand is that only gets activated when people actually talk and feel included. Just having the collection of people in an organization is not going to do it, but it's the ability for people across racial groups to develop trust through conversations, develop collaboration, develop respect for each other, to where those lived experiences can be talked about and both.
And you were trying to close that gap with that need. Now, 4 years later, so when people want to begin to dial back their DEI efforts, I'm going to ask the question, is the need no longer there? So therefore, we're taking the money away, we're doing something else, we're doing it different because we closed the gaps. And so I think that Barbie tapped into that possibility of who you could become and began to offer representation across different demographics, and that has helped them to rebound in their sales.
And so I thought it would be timely, really about a month, really 4 weeks to the day later, to talk about politics and just throw that out to you. What, just high level, what are pros and cons about talking about politics in the workplace?
That politics shows up in the workplace, and even if it's not your candidate, if mass immigration happens, all that stuff is going to impact conversations. Not even conversations, going to impact people, and create spaces for people to have greater cultural humility, greater cultural competency.
Students primarily have these difficult conversations, right, across various differences, right? Office of Diversity and Inclusion, they've done some initiatives. And so we tend to have these type of discussions because the rhetoric, seems a lot harsher. But I wonder, for the average Joe, beliefs you have or certain things that you hold, strongly to.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile that? Because it just like, I don't know, if 4 years we would have had this conversation.
I was cool with John McCain. Now, again, I still would have voted for the Democratic candidate, but if John McCain came into office, I would have been cool with that. Yep. I was cool with George W. Bush. If at the end of the day, if the political party that wins,
because the discourse and the rhetoric was never like this, right? This is one of those things where you just say, okay, well, we knew that people behind closed doors, were going to say things that are not, professional, or say things that are harmful, because nobody would say that in public. But now people are saying that in public. Everything you just said, like everything since grade school, all the teachers you've ever had in your religious, organizations, where you as a parent and teaching your kids, it's like, wow. It's like for the first time in our living history now, because we're not going back to like the days of George Wallace and all
Yeah.
that, where he was like
Yeah.
he was putting it out there. But it seemed like, oh, that fell out of favor. Now you had to use more coded language. So we almost got, and this is why talking about these things is so important, because when you talk about them, it creates opportunities for you to learn new information or to seek new information, because you say, oh, I didn't know this. Oh, let me go learn more about that, right? Oh, I've been operating off this worldview. I can look at the policies of Reagan after Jimmy Carter, and I like to have spirited, debates and conversations like when people have different beliefs, because then it helped. Then eventually we come to this, kind of place where we respect each other. We're able to have more civil conversations with each other, and then we're able to walk away with a more nuanced view of the world and realizing that everybody doesn't think like us, and everybody has reasons for why they believe what they believe, whether you agree with it or not. Now, how do we now work together in productive ways to be able to work productively together? Because now we have the ability, in my mind, we have the ability to have frank and honest conversations with each other. That's powerful. Respectfully, of course, but I say I want to verbally empower you. I say because we've had a dynamic, this father-son dynamic, where you knew that you couldn't say certain things to me, right?
Hmm.
You knew that there were going to be consequences if you said something the wrong way, the wrong tone, or what have you. And but now, as you're getting older, I had to shift that. I have to empower you to say, no, you can talk to me.
I did not move into a different religion because it was the policies of that particular religion, and also the person at the top, right? That I was like, no, this is not what I'm going to be a part of. Um, all of the people, right? And so I'm holding both parties responsible for that regard. But for me, it's really about the type of leader that we have. I ask myself this question: and when I teach my grandchildren leadership, because it's more than just the policies, it's also about how you show up. Now, will I work for somebody? Invite people when you having these conversations. Start out with inviting people to write their feelings down, write their feelings and emotions down.
And within your team and your individual colleagues, that opens up the door for realer and more authentic conversations that can advance your organization, right? Because ultimately, you're not
Absolutely.
trying to change anybody's mind, but you are trying to make sure that people are respectful.